the same time, I might have started a little bit before but wasn't posting as actively. But she just celebrated 10 years of her channel last June, so congratulations, Jen. And she posted one video every day in June, which is a Herculean effort. And so I wanted to do an inspired buy for her. And anyone who watches VisualSounds1 knows she is super, super, super into anime. She is that composes a huge percentage of her content. So if somehow you know about me and don't know about her, and you consider yourself a weeb, an otaku, an anime enthusiast in any form, definitely go to her channel because you will have a field day. But I am much more modest in my anime watching in comparison. But I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but when I was little, one of my best friends growing up was Japanese. So, our Japanese Canadian, evidently, because I grew up in Canada. So I actually learned a fair amount about Japan and culture and anime through her. So I've always kind of, I don't want to say I've been drawn to anime because I don't think that's an accurate description, but I have been exposed to a lot of it, and there are definitely some that I've really enjoyed, some that have just been horrific, but I've definitely watched a fair amount over the years. So even though she and I lost touch probably like after high school basically, I've finally made it to Japan a couple years back, and I still kind of keep in touch with the things I learned from her and her family. So I thought to celebrate Jen reaching 10 years, I would go through my anime list, and you can feel free to, I don't know how it works exactly, I only started doing this very recently. I don't know if you can add me or whatever, but I'm just Llewellyn on my anime list if you are interested. So I'm going to go through my list and talk about the different titles. So right now I have 2 titles that I'm currently watching. One of them I just started watching like last week, and it's actually on Netflix, and it's called The Millionaire Detective, or Fukokeiji Balance Unlimited, if I want to do the accent. So it's basically, I've only watched the first episode. It's about these 2 detectives, and one of them is very much in it because he wants, justice for the people, and he's righteous and noble, and then the other guy is essentially bored and believes money can solve everything, and it hasn't been explained in the first episode, but for some reason he has unlimited money, like truly unlimited, hence the title, Balance Unlimited. I think on Netflix it's called The Millionaire Detective. But yeah, I've just started watching that. I don't really have an opinion on it yet because I've only watched 1 episode, but it is on my list. Now the one that I'm watching religiously is Detective Conan. So some of you may know Detective Conan just from like memes about it, basically. It is one of the longest running animes of all time. It has well over 1,000 episodes and is still going. So I have an interesting story with this one. I actually only started watching and only discovered Detective Conan last year. So due to a whole series of events, even though I was living in New Jersey last year, I ended up back in Canada for parts of the year. Because of insurance, essentially. And due to the pandemic, so, so we had gotten a Crunchyroll subscription, and most of these I've watched on Crunchyroll. Not all of them, but most of them. And yeah, I was running out of stuff. Like, I just wasn't finding things that I was enjoying. This was probably like March last year. And my husband is much more into anime than I am. He watches it a lot more. And so he said he had heard of Detective Conan before, Meitante Conan. And he knew that I watch a lot of crime and murder mystery type shows. And he's like, well, this is the same thing. It's just an anime. So I started watching it. But Crunchyroll only had from episode like 650 onward. So I actually started watching at like episode 650 or like 700 or something. Which, for a show that's been on the air since 94, I think it started in 94. That's a lot of catching up to do. That's a lot of history that I was missing out on. But I got so hooked, and I was watching like constantly, because I couldn't do anything. I had nothing else to do, and I was stuck in the house. So Conan is my pandemic buddy. So I've been working through. I made it from episode 600 and something to the most recent episodes. And then lately I've been going back, and like, so I've watched from episodes 400 to 620 something now. And I'm trying to make it back to where I was in the story. And then if I run out of content again, then I'll go back to like episode 200 and watch to 400 and so on and so forth. So I'm watching it in a really weird order, but it's really episodic, which I like. You can just kind of turn it on, and unless it happens to be one of the shows where the main plot is being discussed, which is actually not that often. Like, usually they'll have maybe like 5 to 10 episodes in a row where they deal with the plot, like the core of the story, which obviously there's over 1,000 episodes and it's been going for 30 years, I think. So obviously I can't go full into the entire plot, but the basic story is there's a high school kid who, for whatever reason, works as a detective, or like helps the detective agencies out in the police, and he gets force-fed this drug, and it's supposed to kill him, but instead it turns him into like the 7 to 10-year-old version of himself. And then he has to continue solving mysteries and also try and figure out how to take down the organization that force-fed him this drug and get back to his normal self and stuff like this. But for the most part, it's just little, like, 1 or 2 episode mysteries that the main character is solving. So I like that you can just kind of tune in for the animation. Basically, somehow this average guy gets in touch with a goddess and sort of semi-jokingly wishes that she were his girlfriend. And then she grants his wish, and then the shenanigans ensue of having a goddess for a girlfriend, basically. But yeah, that one I basically just watched for the animation because it was so pretty. It was just so pretty to watch. Next we have Akagami no Shirayuki Hime. So Snow White with the red hair. I think that's how it's translated. I watched this one recently when I was feeling like I was really into just the real hardcore romance chick flick kind of vibes. There was like a week where that was the mood I was in, and I watched this during that week. It was very I don't know if sappy is the word I'm looking for, but like you saw the plot coming from a mile away. It didn't, there were no twists in this story. Like, it was very straightforward. And the animation was quite pretty. It was quite well done. I know that there are more seasons of this, but I didn't like it enough to watch more of it. Like, I was fine with just the first season. It's just very light, like a light romance, with fantasy elements. But I say fantasy elements, but really almost more medieval than fantasy, if I'm being honest, if I really think about it. But it's cute. If you're feeling like a little swoon, a little mini swoon in a medieval tunic, can recommend. VisualSounds1 Sailor Moon. Okay, so this is my weebiest, most otaku moment. So I probably know more about Sailor Moon than any human really needs to know about Sailor Moon. Like, to the point of ridiculousness. So I was obsessed with Sailor Moon. And as someone who actually has, actual OCD, like clinically diagnosed in the whole shebang, I don't use the word obsessed lightly, but I was obsessed with Sailor Moon. I wrote fan fiction, like it was serious, serious business. And I think now it's more of like, I would consider myself like a Sailor Moon lore master kind of situation. So like, I don't have tons of Sailor Moon products or anything. I don't have like a shrine in my home, nothing like that. But if you ask me almost any question about the series, I can probably answer it. And kind of one of my last friends that I still keep in contact with in Canada, she's also very into Sailor Moon. So we keep up with the Sailor Moon subreddit together, and we'll send memes to each other and stuff. It's fun. But yes, Sailor Moon is very much a nostalgia trip for me. Like, I recognize that it is, in terms of content, it's like the Spice Girls, I feel like Sailor Moon is the anime version of the Spice Girls. It's your childhood, and it's pretty to look at, and you have this total nostalgia feeling about it. That's Sailor Moon to me. But if Naoko Takeuchi or Takeuchi-san comes out with new stuff, I will absolutely watch it. So Sailor Moon has a little piece of my heart, because again, that is my childhood, basically. Next up, Boku no Hero Academia. My Hero Academia. I only watched the first season of this. so I can very much see why people get into it. And also, there's a very big cast of characters, so you can kind of pick your favorite and you can follow their journey, if you will. I can see why it gets the hype, but I'm not a huge superhero person. Sorry, VisualSounds1, I know you very much are. But I feel like we have very different tastes in anime. VisualSounds1 and myself, or Jen and me. So hopefully you get a very broad spectrum of options. So between the two of us, you should find something that you might like. But yeah, I have absolutely nothing against My Hero Academia. It's cute, it's fun, it's entertaining, but just not enough to really make me want to watch more. It didn't have enough of a story for me to really dig my claws into. Because as you saw, if you watched my Netflix video that I just put out recently, you'll know that I like dark, cerebral, kind of thinky, puzzly, mind-bendy type content. So I don't tend towards shonen, and Boku no Hero Academia is very shonen. So yeah. Next up we have Chobits. This one I watched a long time ago. I think I watched it like shortly after getting married, so that was almost 10 years ago now. Yeah, so Chobits it's interesting, and I watched it because I quite liked Clamp. Clamp is a group of artists. I think it's like 5 women who are mangaka. They make manga, and they publish as Clamp. And I remember liking their art style when I was younger, and this was considered one of their most acclaimed releases, was Chobit. So it was on Canadian Netflix at the time, during the period when my parents had it, and we were still able to share accounts back then. Yeah, it's a romance between a human and an AI. But there's more to it than that, but that's the basic premise. It's very cutesy, very tropey. Again, not something I would normally be into, but again, I liked Clamp, so I thought I'd give it a try. But yeah, the animation is very pretty. I will give it that. The animation is very, very pretty. Not typically my style, but enjoyable enough. Next up, oh goodness, let's see if I can say this. My Danganronpa Kibo no Gakuen to Zetsubou no Kokose, the animation. So this one I watched somewhat recently. Oh, the construction has started. I hope you can't hear that too much. But it is, I only found out afterwards that this is actually based on a game. Based on, I think it's like a horror survival game. But it's kind of similar to the Battle Royale type trend that was going on a while ago. Like with the movie Battle Royale itself. There's a bunch of animes that kind of followed that trend as well. I think is it Assassination Classroom? I forget. There are other ones that follow this idea that basically you're all trapped in this area and the last man standing gets to leave. So it was interesting. It had a very strange animation style, but not in an unpleasant way. Yeah, I enjoyed it. But like in retrospect, you can totally see that it's based on a game. I don't know how I didn't clue into that. But yeah, it was good. It had kind of murder mystery elements, which I liked. It had Carrie's hair. Was her name Carrie? Kari. I think it was Kari. And she had kind of like short brown hair with 2 long pieces in the front, and I wanted her hair. And I'm pretty sure I had that haircut at some point in my life. But that's my only recollection of Digimon. I know I watched it, and I know that I saw the movies, I think, as well. But, yep, no memory. It didn't stick with me. But it's on the list anyway. Next is Fruits Basket, which is kind of like the grandpappy of all romance anime, I think. Or that's how it's been described to me. Plotline: impossibly cute girl and wholesome girl ends up entangled with this cursed family who cannot come in physical contact with the opposite sex, otherwise they turn into an animal, and each of them has an animal based on the Chinese zodiac. It is very, very chick flick, very romance, very swoony, heart fluttery kind of anime. Shoujo, I believe that's the term. It was cute. It was fun. Again, not usually my style, but I enjoyed it well enough. Had a satisfying ending, and I think they rebooted it recently. So I think there's like a new version that's out now. So I watched the original one. I haven't watched the new one, but I think it's basically the same story. I think the new one might follow the manga a little bit closer, but I'm not totally sure. I haven't kept up with it. I was fine with the first one, so I was like, whatever. I don't need to watch the next one. Next on the list is Fullmetal Alchemist, widely considered to be the greatest anime of all time. I can see why. It has a really well fleshed out plotline that I think even people who don't necessarily watch anime can appreciate. Like, it's not just about the animation, it's not just about the tropes. And in fact, Fullmetal Alchemist is not very tropey, which I appreciate. Yeah, it's just really solid. It wasn't the deep emotional experience for me that it was for, I know, a lot of people. Like, a lot of people, this is their ride or die. This is the single greatest anime to ever exist for a lot of people. It wasn't that to me, but I definitely enjoyed it. It had, like I said, really good plot line. The characters were very well fleshed out, and you really cared about them, which sometimes anime can be quite shallow in that regard. But Fullmetal Alchemist does like a really good job at just having a solid, beefy storyline. So that is, yeah, I think even if you're watching this video and you're not into anime, this one I could recommend to someone who had never watched anime before, and I feel like it would still go over well. So yeah, Fullmetal Alchemist, I have seen it. I have not seen Brotherhood, but my husband is watching Brotherhood right now, or he just finished it, maybe. I forget. He's either watching it or he just finished it. And I think Brotherhood, if I remember correctly, follows the manga storyline, whereas the original, which is the one that I watched, has its own ending. Like, the ending is quite different. So I've heard that Brotherhood is better. So if you're going to watch one of the two, apparently Brotherhood is the way to go. But I've only seen the original, so I'm not really sure. Next on the list, Ponyo, Kakenoe no Ponyo. This is the Studio Ghibli retelling of The Little Mermaid. I saw this one in theaters years ago, and I got it as a present because I don't collect a lot of things. I'm not a big collector, but I do collect Studio Ghibli DVDs. So I got this as a Christmas present, but then I took it to Guangzhou in China when I was teaching, and one of the teachers, I don't know if she intentionally stole it from me, but she never gave it back. So it's somewhere in China right now, presumably. So I was still a little peeved about that. But it's a cute movie. Studio Ghibli, I feel like you can't really go wrong. Like, it's always going to be entertaining, even if the plot isn't perfect, or even if you're just watching because it's pretty animation. Like, yeah, it's still gonna be good. Oh, and I forgot to mention, for people who are very into anime, I know this is an important specification, but I would say for 90% of these, I watched them in Japanese with subtitles. I much prefer subtitles, but for the movies, I often watch them dubbed because they were released in theaters, and I was in Canada for a lot of them. So I literally couldn't watch the Japanese version. I only had access to the English version. So Ponyo, I think I've watched it in both languages now, because when I got it on DVD, I watched it with subtitles. But the first time I saw it was in theaters, and that was in English. But yeah, it's cute. It's The Little Mermaid. It's a classic. Can't go wrong. Tsuki, which is in English Tales of Earthsea. It was entertaining because it's based on the Ursula K. Le Guin books, Tales of Earth, or Tales from Earthsea, which I haven't read, and I think that's why I didn't mind this so much, because I learned afterwards that a lot of people really didn't like this because it sort of was too different from the original source material. But the Tales of Earthsea is really long. It's like a substantial book, and actually there are a series of books that take place in this world. So I think they did fine condensing it into a single movie. It definitely not my favorite Studio Ghibli movie, but it was fine. It was an entertaining afternoon. Very dark questions. Yeah, it's a panic attack waiting to happen. But yeah, I wouldn't strongly recommend it, but it's fine if you want to watch, if you're feeling like some Studio Ghibli. It's a fine movie to watch. Next, we have Gekkan Shoujo Nozaki-kun, or Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, I think is the English translation. This one had a really good theme song, which is rare because usually I skip past the theme songs in anime because I find them really annoying for the most part. But this one had a solid tune. It's one of the few on this list where I didn't skip past the intro every episode. This one was recommended to me by the friend that I mentioned in Canada, who's also a diehard Sailor Moon fan. It's just cute. It made me laugh. It's very, very silly. It's a rom-com, but with more emphasis on the com than on the rom. So it's basically about this totally unemotional, blank slate stoic dude who writes these super romantic shoujo anime or shoujo manga, just like girls content, so basically chick flicks. And his adventures and the friends around him. I think the funniest part for me is there is a specific voice actor, and I cannot remember his name. Feel free to put it in the comments if you happen to know who I'm talking about. But he plays Bakugo in My Hero Academia, and he also plays another character that I think is later down on the list that I'll talk about. But he basically plays, he's mostly known for playing these kind of like psychotic or like really aggressive, super hostile characters. Or his most famous roles that I'm aware of tend to be this kind of character. But in Nozaki-kun, he plays something completely different. So it's kind of funny hearing that voice that you're used to sounding a very specific way in this totally opposite role. So that was funny for me. Again, I like patterns. So if I recognize something and I see a pattern, or if a pattern gets broken, I noticed that. So yeah, but it's cute. It's a fun little rom-com. Again, more calm than rom, which I appreciated. fine. It was enjoyable. Just entertaining. I don't remember much from it, but it was just something to watch, something to have in the background. Yeah, I don't know why, but it was fine. Heisei Tanuki-kasen Bonboko. I just know this as Bonboko. That is by far the weirdest Studio Ghibli movie I've ever watched. Possibly not the strangest anime, but for Studio Ghibli it was very strange. It's about tanuki, which are like, I don't think they live outside of Japan. I think they're only in Japan. But they're often translated as raccoons, but they're not raccoons. They just kind of resemble raccoons. If you've played the original Mario Bros games, and when Mario has the raccoon tail, that's technically a tanuki tail. I think most people know this by now. I don't think I'm educating anyone with this, but yeah. So it's all about these tanuki and the trying to kind of like survive in the midst of urbanization of Japan. Most Studio Ghibli movies have some kind of environmental message. Miyazaki Hayao is very big on the environment, so that's a really common theme in most Studio Ghibli movies. And if you somehow didn't notice that, I recommend rewatching and trying to find the environmental theme because it's always there. But yeah, it was super weird. I did not know how to feel after Bomboko. It's just a really strange movie. But again, entertaining afternoon. If you like to feel awkward and watch a bunch of animals with giant scrotums, because that's pretty much the whole plot. So yeah, that is on the list. The next two I kind of want to bundle together because they're basically the same. Italia Access Power and Italia World Stars. It is essentially sort of rehashing history, but if all of the countries in the world were individual humans. So, like, it's America, Canada's in there. The main ones are the Axis powers from World War II, so Japan, Italy, and Germany. But there's like almost every country in Europe is represented. Most of North America is represented. Asia, obviously, as well. But it is hysterical, like crying, laughing, funny. Especially if you study history, or if you have if you have traveled a lot, or have friends from lots of different countries. It is just so funny. You can't take it too seriously because, of course, these are all based on stereotypes of the different countries and how people in those countries act, and based on history as well. So it's like an older vision of what those countries were, but it is still very, very funny. I really enjoyed it, and it's like really mini episodes, so the episodes are like 5 minutes long, 10 minutes long, like they're very short. So you can fit them into your schedule no matter what you're doing. But yeah, I thought it was hilarious. The next one is Horimiya. That one I actually watched this yesterday. I just sat down and watched the whole thing. It's slice of life, I guess, would be the best description. So it definitely is a romance as well, but more slice of life. So it's just about these two high school students who appear to be opposites, but aren't really. That's a very bad description, but I don't want to give away the whole story. But it's basically your classic high school slice of life anime. It was good. I enjoyed it. was less dramatic than some of the other ones that I've watched, which again, I appreciate. I don't really like huge amounts of interpersonal drama. That just stresses me out. So, yeah, it was cute. Just a very light watch. You don't get super attached. You don't. It's just kind of, it's like a filler. That would be how I would describe it, but not in a bad way. I don't mean that in a condescending way at all. It's just 13 episodes. You get to see the relationship develop, and you get to see the side characters have their own little plot lines, and then it's done, wrapped up with a bow, and it's over. So, no complaints. Next one, Howl no Okoku Shiro. So, Howl's Moving Castle is the English one. This is based on the Diana Wynne Jones book of the same name. This is probably one of my favorite Studio Ghibli movies. And I couldn't even really tell you why. The animation is pretty. The storyline is cute. I would say the voice acting, but this is one of the ones that I saw in theaters, so I don't really remember if I've seen this one in Japanese, so I can't really comment on the acting. The English acting was fine, I guess. Yeah, but I guess for some reason I just like this one, and I have no logical explanation as to why. But yeah, it's very good. It's about a young woman who is cursed to be old before her time, and her adventures with a wizard named Howl, who has a big shock moving castle. It's in the title. But it's very sweet. It's a very sweet movie. Next is, so you can say this in a bunch of different ways. You could say ID invaded, id invaded, or ito invaded. This one was totally up my alley. This is like exactly the kind of content that I'm into. So it's very similar to my favorite movie, Paprika. And it is super Freudian, Jungian, kind of psychoanalysis, but with some sci-fi elements and murder mysteries. So it is just, chef's kiss. It is awesome. I loved It Invaded. I can't explain it without giving it away. But if you like psychological, if you like crime, if you like sci-fi, like, it's just really, really good. I really liked It Invaded, and it's short, so again, 13 episodes. It won't take much of your time, and so worth it. Really like It Invaded. Imoto sae ireba ii. This one has an English title. It's like Devastation, Revolution, or Resonance in Terror. Resonance in Terror. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called in English. This was on Netflix a while back. It was... it's like I don't know how I feel about it. I can't... Yeah, I really don't. I remember being very sad at the end and thinking how sad the ending was. But that's all I remember clearly, because it was several years back that I watched this one. So if you like your endings ultra depressing, can recommend. But otherwise, yeah, if you need a happy ending, do not watch Do Not Touch with a 10-Foot Pole. Okay, Kageyame no Monogatari. Princess Kaguya. It's another Studio Ghibli, although the animation for this one is very different. They really took a very different direction. This one is... it's a traditional Japanese folklore, so it's, I guess, again, there's kind of like a specific nostalgia factor that I think they were probably going for in Japan that obviously wouldn't hit the same with me because I didn't grow up in Japan with Japanese folklore and stories. But I was familiar with the story of Kaguya Hime, the bamboo cutter's daughter, I think is how they usually translate the original folklore story. So yeah, it's good, but it's an old story, and it feels like an old story. So, yeah, that's the best way I can describe it. So if you like fairy tales, you'll probably like this. But if you're into more complex storylines, it's probably not as good for you. Karigurashi no Ariete. I think this one's called The Secret World of Ariete. I believe this is based on something else, but I can't remember what it's based on. Maybe The Borrowers. I'm not 100% sure. This one I watched years ago, and I don't remember very much of it. It didn't leave a strong impression on me. But I remember it being pretty and enjoyable. Just kind of a standard Studio Ghibli. Like I said before, Studio Ghibli is pretty solid. It's just you know you're gonna get at least a decent movie if you watch something from there. It might not be life-changing. It might be life-changing. I don't know. But it's always gonna be at least okay. So I think that would be Ariete would fall in that category for me. Kaze no Tani no Nausicaä in the Wind, I think is the English title for that one. Probably my least favorite Ghibli, apart from Pompoko, just because it was so bizarre. But again, very super hit you over the head with the environmental message. So if you're a climate warrior, you may like this one. But yeah, it just didn't really stick with me. I don't know why. It was fine. It was a decent movie. Lovely Complex. This one, probably of all the rom-coms that I've watched in my life, this was probably my favorite one. And I think that has very much to do with me more than to do with the actual story. Because basically the plot line is there's this, okay, by Japanese standards, really tall girl. We're actually the same height. And I'm not very tall, I don't think. And this very short guy, and it's their kind of their story of how their romance develops. But I used to be the tall girl, and I once, many years ago, had a crush on a guy who was a lot shorter than me. So I had that extra kind of like a nostalgia factor that not everyone is gonna have. So I think that's why I enjoyed it more, because I remember that situation in my own life. But it's just a cute rom-com. That's all it is. Next on the list, Magic Knight Rayearth. This one, I actually played the Super Nintendo game first before I realized that the game was based on an anime, which was based on a manga. And this is how I discovered Clamp. So I played the original JRPG. I played a translated version on the Super Nintendo. And when I was looking it up, like on Wikipedia or something later, I realized that it had this whole other thing, and that it was made by Clamp, and kind of started my interest in that, the collective, or that group of mangakas. Honestly, the anime is pretty standard fantasy anime. Power of friendship, bunch of high school girls, very standard fare. But it was cool to watch the anime that the game that I liked was based on. So that was fun. Majo no Takyubin, Kiki's Delivery Service. That one was very cute. Again, I would have watched this one years ago with my younger cousin. Back in either Nova Scotia or Ontario, I think in Nova Scotia. So I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember liking it and thinking it was a cute movie, and I enjoyed it. features the song Country Roads, which is oddly unexpected. In my list of things that I anticipate, a Japanese movie that heavily features a song about West Virginia is not in my list of most expected outcomes. But here we are. It's super unrealistic, especially the main plot line is like, that escalated quickly. but it's cute. If you suspend your disbelief, it's cute. Mononoke Hime, Princess Mononoke. Again, super famous Studio Ghibli movie. Yeah, okay, people are probably going to be complaining that I only gave it a 6, and I will tell you why. It is because I do not deal well with blood, and there is a lot of blood in this movie. So I couldn't watch half of it because it was so bloody. The storyline is good, the characters are good. It's an excellent movie, just not for me. Yeah, so I'm sorry, Mononoke Hime diehards. It is, in terms of quality, I recognize what it is, but I base my ratings on my own experience of it, so that is that. But again, strong environmental message, kind of similar to Disney's rendition of Pocahontas, but like an edgier, much edgier version with more supernatural elements. Maybe I would describe it. Moshishi is probably my favorite anime series, which is unexpected for a lot of people, I think, because it's not super famous or super well known, and it's very episodic. So there is a main character that you follow through this whole thing, but really you could watch any of the episodes in any order and it would be exactly the same. So it's just individual episodes, and it's just so atmospheric. It is such a vibe or a mood, I think people say nowadays. It's so calming and yet cerebral at the same time. Oh, it is just so good. And this is one of the rare ones where I like the English voice acting and the Japanese voice acting equally. I'm pretty sure the main character, Kingo, is voiced by Travis Willingham. So if anyone watches Critical Role, if you're in that subgroup, you'll know who that is. Or if you are a diehard Skyrim fan, Serana, it's her real-life husband. And he does a really good job as Kingo, as the main character. Yeah, it's just, there's something about this that just hit me in the right spot, and I adore Mushishi. First season, very good. Second season, also excellent. Not quite as good as the first season, but still excellent. I have no idea who I would recommend this anime to, because it's so not, I don't know. I can't think of any other show like it. I can't think of anything similar. So I don't know who to recommend this to, but give it a shot. I love it. It's probably my favorite series that I've watched. Yeah, it's just, I just love it. Next up, Neko no Ongaeshi. The Cat Returns, I think, is the translation for that one. Again, I watched this one in English because I saw it, either I saw it in theaters first, or I had the DVD, but only the English version was on the DVD for some reason. Like, it might have been one of those DVDs you got in like a cereal box, something like that. But it has Carrie Elwes in it, and I adore The Princess Bride. Such a classic movie, so it has a soft spot in my heart for that. But it's a cute little story, and I do love kitties. I have a kitty myself, and I've had Netflix video that I did earlier, it's a perfect 10 for me. It's just my all-time favorite movie. It's amazing. If you liked Inception, I definitely recommend Paprika. So good. But if you're a younger viewer, then maybe not. I should specify. Like, I am a grown lady, and with Paprika, there's definitely mature themes. So I'd say at least 16 and up. Maybe mature 14. I mean, it's up to you, obviously, but it's my favorite movie ever. Followed by Perfect Blue. Perfect Blue is, I think, technically a great movie. It touches on some really interesting themes. This one is definitely like 18 up. It is dramatic. And I said dramatic, not dramatic. It's both, but it's dramatic to watch. It's about an idol, like a J-pop idol, who wants to transition into acting and being a legitimate actress. And a lot of psychological craziness happens. And a lot of very triggering, sexually explicit things happen. So, do your research before watching this one. It is very thought-provoking, but it was just such an unpleasant experience to watch, and I think that's how it's supposed to be. That I couldn't rate it highly, but if you want to come out of a movie thinking, WTF, I need to go read the Wikipedia to understand what just happened, then Perfect Blue is the movie for you. Next is Pokemon, and 2 of the Pokemon movies. Again, 90s kid. I watched Pokemon like everyone else. Same as Digimon. It's like I remember it, and I remember Pokemon more than I remember Digimon. Because Pokemon came out first, and it was all the rage. So, yeah, it, like, I remember it more, but it didn't leave, like, a lasting impression. It's more of, like, a pop cultural phenomenon. Like, even if you didn't watch Pokemon, you know who Pikachu is. You know, it's one of those things. So, it's not ranked super highly for me, but, yeah, it's on there. I did watch it. Moving on, we have Psychopaths. Psychopaths I really enjoyed. I only watched the first kind of story arc, or I think it was only 1 season. It might have been 2 seasons, but I think it's only 1 season, the first story arc. Adored it and hated the ending. Otherwise, this would be ranked much higher. I would have probably given it a 9, but I hated the ending so much. The story is super cool. Combination crime sci-fi, which, if you watched my Netflix video, and if you've watched this far, you're probably very aware of that. I'm really into crime, and sometimes I like a sci-fi twist in there as well. But it's essentially the idea of big data being used to measure the intent to commit a crime, and if your intent to commit a crime gets too high, you get pre-arrested before the crime can happen. So it's kind of like this big data dystopian type thing. Sometimes I think watching it now, I watched this a couple years back, watching it now would probably be almost a little bit too real. But it was extremely well done. It was really, really interesting, and I definitely recommend Psychopaths to people. Very good. Saiki Kuso no Tainan. Okay, so Saiki, this is just a pure comedy. It is a comedy anime, and this one is especially hilarious to me because it is basically if my husband had psychic abilities. They're like the same human. So for me, this was hysterical. I think it's just funny anyway. Like it's just a comedy. But for me, it hit extra home because because I was like, I'm watching my husband in high school, except he has psychic powers. This is where he's a bigger fan of this. This is probably in his like top 10 anime. This is where he learned the phrase yare yare, which most people know from JoJo, which is not on this list, but I have watched, I think, like the 3rd and 4th season of JoJo. But yes, Saiki is basically my husband, and not in like a husbando, waifu, otaku kind of a way, but just like their personalities are the same. So it was very funny series. I think it deals well with the comedy that surrounds the idea of omnipotence, basically, and how kind of insane the idea of omnipotence is if you give it to a human. So yeah. Satsuriku no Tenshi, Angel of Death, Angels of Death. Sorry, I accidentally hit the mute. This is the other one where that voice actor I was talking about, who plays Bakugo in My Hero Academia, and who plays, I think his name is Mikushiba in Nozaki-kun. This is also another one of the roles that he plays like a psychotic person. This one is super dark. It's all about serial killers. Yeah, it was good. But this is what started my romantic comedy kick, because I was so just like, this show was so dark that I needed a palate cleanser. I needed something completely brainless and just fluffy, happy-go-lucky content after finishing Satsuriku no Tenshi. Jeez. Anyway, very dark, but very interesting. And the ending is kind of ambiguous, which sometimes I like, sometimes I don't. But yeah, Angel of Death, very interesting. Sentochiro no Kamikakushi, Spirited Away. Of course I've seen Spirited Away, and of course it's fantastic. I think this is the first Studio Ghibli movie that a lot of people watch because it won the Oscar. Yeah, it's a girl, her parents get turned into pigs, wild stuff happens. A river is heavily involved, but yeah, it's very classic Studio Ghibli, and definitely one of the best Studio Ghibli movies. Shin Sakura Taisen, the animation. This is another one that is based on a game. And I actually never played the game because I believe it was for the Sega Genesis. And then they switched to PlayStation, and I only ever had a PlayStation 1, and I think the games that this was based on were released for like PlayStation 2 and PSP and stuff like that, which I never had. So, yeah, it was meh. It was pretty meh. I wouldn't really recommend it to anyone, but kept me busy for a while. Just kind of a mecha, like a low-end mecha anime, I guess. Tenku no Shirodaputa, Castle in the Sky, another Studio Ghibli classic one. Yeah, I'm trying to come up with a plot summary that's not super long. Basically, a mysterious girl falls from the sky on this guy who's like a miner mechanic kind of thing. It's very steampunk. Airships, that sort of aesthetic, I guess. And they're trying to, he tries to save her from the various people that are trying to capture her for her mysterious powers. And yeah, it's a cute little fantasy steampunk kind of story. Tonari no Totoro, My Neighbor Totoro. Somehow I managed to not watch this movie until last week, or like 2 weeks ago. guess in Korea because of the very complicated and unhappy history between Japan and Korea. But in mainland China, I've seen Totoro. Like, Totoro is just everywhere in Asia. And somehow I never watched it until like a week or two ago. Honestly, not my favorite, but I can see how it appeals to kids. It's very much a kids movie. Yeah, if you have young kids, I would recommend it for them. And I mean, it's Studio Ghibli, so the animation is still very pretty, and it's very enchanting, and this magical feeling of childhood kind of describes Totoro. Yeah, not my favorite, but I watched it at almost 30, so I think if I had have watched it as a kid, I would have more of a nostalgia factor for me, but I did not. So, what's the next one? やはり俺の青春ラブコメディは間違ってる。I have no idea what this one was called in English. I don't even know if it had an English title. I only watched the first season. It's one of these high school rom-com type situations. I remember it being okay, but like not being interested enough to continue beyond the first season. Yeah, no real strong feelings about that one. Wait a second. Sankyo no Terror is Resonance in Terror. What was that previous one that I described? Where was it? Okay, let me go through really quickly. I think I described the wrong thing. Imoto sae irebai. What's this one then? Okay, we're gonna open this and see what this one is. Oh gosh, oh lord, I described completely the wrong anime. Okay, Imoto sae irebai. Totally different. Okay, so what I described for that one is actually... I skipped too far ahead. What I described for that one is actually Sankyo no Terror. That's the one where it had the super sad ending. The other one is All You Need Is a Little Sister, I think is what it's called. Oh my goodness, this one, the fan service was just outrageous. It was just... Whew, I don't know how I made it through the whole series because it was so much fan service. The story was interesting. It was cute. It's about a series, like a bunch of novelists in their lives. So it's slice of life. But there was way too much fan service. If they got rid of that, I actually probably would have liked it because it was kind of a cute storyline underneath it all. But way too much fan service. Sorry about that. I gave the wrong description based on the title, and not recognizing it. Sorry. So yes, this one is very slice of life with tons of fan service. Sankyo no Terror is Resonance in Terror. That one has the super sad ending. So again, if you like crime, murder mystery type content like I do, then Everything Becomes N is also a recommendation. So shows that I have on hold, VisualSounds1, Sailor Moon Crystal. So this is the Sailor Moon revival. I got to about episode 20, and then I got rid of my Crunchyroll subscription because Crunchyroll is regional, and here in Taiwan there's like nothing on it, so it wasn't worth paying the money for. But if I'm ever back in Canada or back in North America in general, I might get my Crunchyroll back and finish it. Oh gosh, One Piece. So One Piece. Okay, when I moved to Taiwan, I knew that there would be a few months where my husband and I would be separate because his paperwork wasn't going to be available until the end of July. And now there's a whole other thing going on there. But at the time, I knew that there was going to be a time when we were separated. So one of the things, since he really likes anime, one of the things that I thought we could do is try to tackle one of the big animes, because I was already working on Detective Conan myself. So I thought, okay, well, let's try to tackle one together. So we picked One Piece because One Piece is so iconic in the world of anime. Like, again, he's almost Pikachu level in the sense that even if you don't know anime and you don't watch it, you've probably seen Luffy or Choppa or Sanji. Like, you've probably seen them somewhere. And we knew that One Piece was like Conan is in the sense that it had like 900 plus episodes. But we quickly realized that both of us fall asleep immediately whenever we try to watch One Piece. Like, it's to the point where it functions better than most narcotics. So if I need to fall asleep, or if my husband needs to fall asleep, we just put on One Piece and we are out like a light in seconds. So it has been like I gave up trying to watch it because I just fell asleep every single time. Maybe someday I'll just like pound back 7 green teas and try to watch One Piece. But man, oh man, it is unbelievable how quickly we fall asleep watching One Piece. These are my dropped animes. So when I was a kid, I'd say middle school age, Inuyasha was all the rage. But I never really kept up with it. Like, I had a few friends, I'd say like 3 friends, who were super, super, super into it at the time. And so I watched it with them a lot. But I didn't keep up with it. Kimi no Todoke was a little bit too cringe for me. I tried when I was having my rom-com kick after watching Angel of Death. I tried to watch it, but it was too cringy. The character interactions were too, like, the communication between characters was too bad. I can't handle interpersonal drama. So, yes, I couldn't finish it. Sword Art Online, I just lost interest. It's a little too shonen for me, I think. Trigun, I have no idea. I tried to watch it because I was told it was a classic, but I just could not get into it. Yep, sorry, because I know it's a classic. And then these are ones that I haven't watched yet, but that I'm planning to do. The other anime that I haven't mentioned that I do somewhat follow is Gintama. So Gintama is probably my husband's favorite anime, and I kind of know it by proxy because he always had it on, so I would always be like kind of watching it. So I know the characters from it, and I know most of the story, at least vaguely. My favorite being Ichigata. But yes, that is my anime list. And I've managed to talk about anime for over an hour, which for someone who is, again, quite casual about